Are you ready?
Hello, listeners. This is Ophidian the Cobra. And today, on A Shot of Wrestling, you can hear me talk about my company, Closet Champion, that I run alongside of the beautiful Kate Nix. And also, a few different lessons about what I teach at the Wrestle Factory. Oh, yeah.
Shot, what? Is that the message you got? We about to go live, are you ready to rock? So take a shot, what? Is that the message you got? From the fans to the fans, let me hear the crowd pop. So take a shot, what? Is that the message you got? We about to go live, are you ready to rock? So take a shot, what? Is that the message you got? From the fans to the fans, let me hear the crowd pop. So take a shot. Oh yeah, so take a shot. Oh, so take a shot. Oh, so take a shot.
Now, number two, practice the snake style.
All right, everybody, if you're ready and willing, I'm able, and welcome to another exciting edition of A Shot of Wrestling, the interviews. If you've not done so already, follow us on all forms of social media at A Shot of Wrestling on Facebook and Instagram, and Shot of Wrestling, no A, on Twitter. You can also contact us via email at inbox@ashotofwrestling.com or dial it up 619-343-3005 and leave your comments on A Shot of Wrestling hotline. And we say it time and time again that wrestling brings us together, and today is no different. Today, we are joined by the venomous and vile serpent from the Nile, the one and only master of snake style, the Cobra Supernova, the man, the creature, the snake, Ophidian the Cobra. Welcome to A Shot of Wrestling, brother.
Well, normally I do that part, but I appreciate the excitement and ferocity in which you spit that vile, venomous catchphrase at me. Thank you for that.
Dude,
I am Ophidian.
That's right, dude. It required that type of introduction because you're right. You are Ophidian. If you have not caught this man wrestling, it's one of the treats of your life, I guarantee you. I actually was fortunate enough to call one of your matches in BCW. And when I saw what you were doing in the ring, the innovative style that you've created, that snake style, it was something that blew my mind that I've never seen before. And I was like, wow. Like literally that was the only word that came out of my mouth after your match.
Oh, I thank you. I believe that was against Travis Huckabee, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a Chikara spotlight match at our wedding show for BCW. And dude, amazing. How did you develop that snake style?
Well, that kind of came to me from multiple parts of my life. I truly believe, and I'm sure we'll go into this at some part, that we are an amalgamation of all things that we've experienced. And I've been lucky enough to experience lots of things that have lended itself to in-ring work, like various martial arts I've trained in, whether it's Goju-Ryu, Taekwondo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, other forms of entertainment that I've had the chance to dabble in, like with like circus arts, like aerial silks and lyra, as well as having a life partner, my wife Kate Nix, who is a burlesque performer and teaches it, and being able to pull from that aspect of the world, I've kind of gathered everything that I've learned from all the various arts and turned it into something that I feel is very unique in the world of professional wrestling.
It's very unique. It's very captivating. Now, you mentioned something that are not too familiar with me, aerial silks. What is that?
So if you've ever seen a performer kind of working on fabrics that hang from the ceiling, and it's usually a piece of fabric split down into two so that they can grip it to climb up and down. Sometimes they're looped at the bottom depending on the performance.
Oh man, that's super hard, no?
Yeah, it's extremely hard. I learned that very quickly. Absolutely, a round of applause goes out to anybody that's able to perform that on the regular. The amount of upper body strength you need to hold yourself up for an entire performance is mind-boggling.
Have you ever considered actually using those silks in a match?
Not necessarily, but I have performed on a lot of variety style shows for professional wrestling, shows that have circus performers and live music and so on and so forth. And I have seen the crossover between the two forms terms of entertainment. And it's there, absolutely. Just might be a bit difficult to attack an opponent while I'm trying to climb up some silks.
Your partner, your wife, a burlesque performer, so she's a performer as well. How did you guys meet?
We met on a variety show, one of those circus music variety shows out in Detroit. And we were friends at first before anything else. We met in 2008 at a company called Squared Circle Review, the world's only rock and wrestling circus. And we're talking about an undead circus with where every performer on the show is a sideshow freak of sorts. Mm-hmm. So Zach Gowen worked the show as Pogo, the one-legged boy, and I am the human snake while at Squared Circle Review. And, you know, you have Gunther T. Armstrong, right? A strong man, and Glenda, the bearded ladies, half man, half woman, and they perform. And it's a magnificent show that also, again, has, you know, live music and circus performers of all types, not just people that work on aerial apparatuses, but fire breathers and, you know, contortionists and all kinds of other stuff.
When you met your wife for the first time, did you get that funny feeling in the stomach? You're like, wow, this is maybe the woman that I'm going to marry?
Absolutely not. We talk about this regularly. When we met, we were both very young, you know, because this is, again, now at this point, 11 years ago for us. And we didn't start courting each other until maybe closer to 2011 or 12. So it wasn't even an option really for both of us. But I guess that was the beauty of it, right?
Yeah. But I could only assume like someone in the business like that would actually understand more of your travels and what it takes to be a performer and a trainer like you are.
Absolutely. She lived out in the Detroit area and traveled, and it wasn't until she was traveling into the Philadelphia area and we got to hang out outside of the context of the show, you know, where we kind of hit it off.
Yeah, nice. Early on, for us getting to understand a lot of the performers and wrestlers, we never would thought we would get this opportunity. Early on when you were watching wrestling, what were some of the shows and people that influenced you into really wanting to pursue this as a career?
Well, I say this regularly about my path into professional wrestling. The WWE, or at the time WWF and WCW, and these companies, they made me love pro wrestling, without a doubt. Like, my love for pro wrestling comes from watching these companies, you know, your major companies as a child. But I grew up in the Philadelphia area, so that means we had WGTV Channel 18 or 48, depending on where you lived at. You know, whether you lived in Philly proper or one of the suburbs around it. We had on late night television, by the time I hit middle school and high school, we had, more so high school, but we had ECW that would come on at 1 a.m., you know, on this channel. And then you had Fake UTV from CZW. You had ROH's stuff, NWA Wildside, WEW, all these companies that would come on every night of the week at midnight or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., depending on, you know, what year it was and what the time slot was. That's what made me want to become a professional wrestler. I grew up very close to the ECW arena. So I would go to shows on the regular especially once I was able to drive myself, because my parents definitely didn't take me to these shows. Mm-hmm. So once I was in a position to take myself, I never missed a show at the arena. And being in that environment, you know, only fosters that need to become a performer. You know, when you're there living it, when you're there in the environment, just entrenched in it with all the other performers, you can reach out and feel like you're a part of the show, which is not something you necessarily get when you're at like a WWE show, which is not a knock on the experience, but, you know, that stadium feeling, you aren't a part of the show, you're watching a show. So when you're at that independent level, especially at a building like the ECW arena, you know, you are a part of the show just as much as the performers are.
How was that first time going in there, knowing that this was somewhere that you've seen a lot of the legends that have inspired you to go and walk those hallowed halls and walk in the same feet of like a Sandman or an RVD or a Sabu?
Well, I was lucky enough to get my start in that building, meaning that I trained in that. That's where the school that I attended was located. So when I joined professional wrestling, there were multiple companies that ran their school out of that building. Chikara, CZW, PWU, and there's also like Johan Boxing and other, you know, there's other forms of combat sports that were in that building or attached to it at least. But we would so I trained there. So the ring would be set up in the middle of the arena, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 rings, depending on, you know, again, like what other companies were running and what year, whether they're running training or not. So you just had rings set up in there, and we trained, and it was mind-blowing, you know, like you said, to be in this building training where I've witnessed all these greats come through and form, not just on TV, but then live and in person. the original goal was to main event the ECW arena. Like that was like, coming in, fresh into wrestling training, to main event that show, or to main event a show in that building. And my very first appearance in that building, to perform, I remember being in front of the curtain and hearing my music hit and just taking a breath, kind of gather yourself. And before you're realizing it, you're working yourself into a panic. Like, oh shit, I'm about to wrestle at the ECW in my debut.
That's wild.
I had only ever had a few matches, before this. So my debut at the ECW arena with Chikara was with my tag team partner at the time, Amasis, who was making his first ever match in front of a live audience. Like, we're doing it at this building. How is this happening? How is our first, appearance together as a team here in this building? And then, of course, butterflies kind of go away once you hit the curtain. But yeah, I was lucky enough to have that experience often. I've wrestled that building a bunch. I've even had the chance to main event it, and I'm happy to have been in that position.
That's amazing, bro. Why do you think other people come from all over the world to train at the Wrestle Factory?
Well, the training at the Wrestle Factory is second to none. There is no other school currently in the U.S. that has as many trainers and has as many training hours and options available for you than the Wrestle Factory, outside of, the Performance Center, which is an anomaly in the world of professional wrestling, right? Like they're the industry leader. Of course, they're going to have the most. But on the independent level, there's nobody that has more options than us and more trainers. And that's not necessarily a brag in any way. It's just truth. Like that is why we set that up. Or Mike Quackenbush, has set the school up in that way. The level of training that you get from us, from our staff, that is world traveled, is second to none. We're teaching you not just American pro wrestling, but Mexican lucha libre, Japanese pro wrestling, right? The catch and Lancaster styles from the UK and Europe. Like, you're getting a mix of everything from guys that have not only learned it themselves, but have actively participated in it in their travels. And I know I can speak to my own experiences, having been through, 16 countries across 4 continents, being able to teach 14 of them. Like, I have that experience. I've been able to train in Japan. I've trained throughout Europe, trained in South America. That's why people travel from so far away to train at our school. And on top of that, you have Chikara attached to the Wrestle Factory, that you may have the chance to perform with and in front of. And of course, Chikara has major reach across the world, not just, in the American independent scene, but especially throughout Europe. It's why people like myself have been able to travel as much as we have, because of the reach Chikara has globally.
And Chikara offers many of the viewers these larger-than-life characters, and each one has its unique story. Is that something that is developed during the training process and during the being part of the Wrestle Factory as students?
Man, so Chikara has something unique going for it in its performer base, right? Like, there are characters and creatures and larger-than-life performers there that just don't exist anywhere else. And that is a part of the training process, absolutely. But that's also just the culture of Chikara. I mean, you're talking about storylines that are pulled directly from comic books, and cartoon and anime. That, like, these are not just like a random story plucked from a comic book page, but stories that have developed over years and years and years. Storylines that span over the course of 4 or 5 years, where you can trace the origins of a story that far back, not just through watching video, but from exploring secret websites and hidden channels and ARG games, things that just no other company has ever done and still has not done in professional wrestling. There's no other company that has created such lore that you can really, if you wanted to, dive in and get lost in.
Yeah, I totally respect the creative process and looking at the characters that you guys put together. Yours is very unique. Can you tell us a little bit of the backstory of, how Ophidian came to be and the evolution of who you are?
Well, as I've stated before a little earlier, I truly believe that what you see today in front of you, not just from myself, but from everybody that you meet, is the result of all things that they've experienced, right? So, Ophidian, without a doubt, right, is who I am, not just as a performer, but as a human. Everything that I've done in life, all the training that I've had through various martial arts, and again, the stuff that we've covered already, as well as all the things that I've ingested, which there's a lot of Shaw Brothers movies. Without a doubt, I'm a huge, huge, huge Shaw Brothers fan. along with things related to like WMAC Masters and Mortal Kombat. And my love of horror, things like, the Hellraiser series, anything Clive Barker really has ever done, like Nightbreed, Hellraiser, and Lord of Illusion, along with, other various things related to that. You're seeing all the best parts, or what I feel the best parts of all the things I love being put on stage. On top of that, I happen to be more flexible than most other humans in the world of professional wrestling. Not to say I'm not that. I see people way more flexible than me in many other art forms, but when it comes to pro wrestling, I definitely am a bit above the rest, and it just kind of lends to itself. So when it comes time to present on stage, I feel like there's no better visage to wear than that of a cobra. If I'm going to wear an armor in front of an audience and in front of the people that I decide to compete against, I feel like there's no better display of what I am and who I am than that of a cobra.
Yeah. No, yeah. And then once we see you wrestle, we see you in the ring, and that style comes out, it's just such a unique blend. And you're like, yeah, of course, it's a cobra, it's a snake. And it's everything you do, from the way you move, the way you talk, everything gets amplified by that cobra style, by that snake style. As a creative,
it absolutely is. And
yeah, go ahead.
No matter the incarnation, like right now, kind of going through a metamorphosis, I'm molting, if you will, and I've become the Ouroboros. I have a new look over the last 2 years that I've been developing, and regardless of whether I'm a cobra or the Ouroboros, which is ever evolving and ever changing, there still is that my slither and slime to what I do.
I love that you brought that up, because that's definitely where I was going. It sounds like you're a very creative person. So in your personal life, is your mind just going on like, where's the next step for my evolution? Where could I draw more inspiration to create something new and ever evolving?
Yes, much to the dismay of Mrs. the Cobra, Kate. That is always the case. There's always a constant, what am I going to do next? And it's something I talk about not only to my students, but when I give seminars and things related. Understanding the world that you're building and not having just an immediate end goal in mind, but what the evolution is going forward and what that might look like in 2 years, what that might look like in 5 years. And while you don't need to have a definite answer, knowing where you're going is just important as knowing where you're at right now.
So what are some of the things that have been going through your mind lately as far as evolution of character and things and areas where you're drawing inspiration from?
Well, there's I guess to a point in a person's life and career, right, where things need to change. And at this point, I've been active in the world of professional wrestling for 13 years. That's a long time, not just in pro wrestling, but to be a part of any profession, and actively performing. So I personally felt like it's time to change. It's time to evolve, right? It's time to kind of mix it up a little bit, not just for the sake of my own sanity, but for the people that have followed me through my career, to give them something new and fresh. Mm-hmm. And there's no better representation of that than the Ouroboros itself, which is about, life and death, which is about rebirth, the end of one to continue into another, right? Never over. You're never just ending. You're beginning anew.
Yeah.
And I thought that was super important to me and to how I would progress forward, to the point where I decided to make that who I am. It's the perfect representation of a snake molting, of a snake evolving, the Ouroboros, which dates back to all the way back to Egyptian mythology, which I'm very, very heavily tied into with the origins of Ophidian. Mm-hmm. While the Ouroboros itself isn't specifically Egyptian, but it can the origins and the idea of the Ouroboros can be traced back that far to that culture. As every culture, every civilization has had some form of an Ouroboros, even if it wasn't called that. That circle of life concept.
That concept you also incorporate into your new mask design that I've seen, which is so freaking cool, by the way. Did you design it yourself and put it together?
Everything that I wear in the ring is designed in-house in my company, Closet Champion, that I run alongside with Kate. She's the main designer. She's the one that puts pen to paper as far as that stuff goes. But a little bit, without this becoming about her necessarily, but a little bit about her so you understand where we're coming from. Mm-hmm. She comes from a family of seamstresses and has been sewing her whole life. She's been creating her whole life. She's been just as, if not more creative than I am as far as living in a world that is of a creative nature, being not only just a burlesque performer, but being a musician that has released multiple albums, as well as being a seamstress and doing all types of crazy things outside of, those things as well. So our home and our business is just all about creating every single aspect of everything that we do, not only on our own, but for others, whether it's creating in-ring music, whether it's creating, the costumes or designing costumes that they may wear in a ring, as well as teaching them about the art that they may be performing in, which primarily we, do pro wrestling. And for a while, she was also teaching burlesque. She's no longer an active burlesque performer. She's retired from that, but that is always everything that we make. Absolutely everything you see on Ophidian from top to bottom, whether it's promos you see online, whether it's music that you hear, or the gear that I wear, is all designed by us.
Now, you mentioned you guys develop in-ring music and attire. Are there other performers that we may be familiar with as far as the music or attire that you have contributed to them?
There's a few. If you follow Chikara right now, our Kate only produces stuff for in-house. Our company's only making music for Chikara as a whole. And we've done some other side projects, of course. But if you've anybody out there that's ever listened to Oceania's theme, which is her like a pirate theme, as well as Blanche Babish and myself, and of course Blank and the Nouveau Aesthetic, as well as the Crucible's brand new theme. She scored the entire Crucible series, which is Heralds and Harbingers for Chikara. And of course, our new theme song.
Let's go dive into a little bit more of your training with new students. At this point, you may have developed a kind of eye to recognize that new top talent. Who are some of the people that you would recommend our listeners to keep an eye on?
Well, I am currently leading a stable of 8 young, fresh faces in the world of professional wrestling in Chikara, known as the Crucible. Matt Makowski, who was a veteran of both Elite XC and Bellator, is probably one of my best students, without a doubt. And I would absolutely check him out. He's insane in the ring with his technical ability, and it's flawless. A guy like Matt DeMorist, or E.M. DeMorist, Evan Matthew DeMorist. He is another one that has he's a bit infamous on the backyard wrestling scene. Is now, wrestling professionally alongside myself. They're 2 absolute top tier faces that you'd want to check out. If you've never seen them, they're doing things that you've never seen in the world of professional wrestling. I can promise you. Both of them are completely opposite ends of the spectrum as far as their performance styles, and that's the beauty of professional wrestling, right? Is that you can get a little bit of mix of everything. Matt DeMorist is very flashy and does invents new stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. A guy like Matt Makowski is very, mat-based and technical.
Gotcha. And did you start off thinking as a wrestler that training would be something that you would want to explore in the future, or they just kind of find you?
Definitely just kind of happened accidentally. Chikara is a company that is built around a school, being the Wrestle Factory. So we have a lot of young performers in Chikara. When you're watching it, you are watching guys that are wrestling some of their first ever matches ever in the world of pro wrestling. So, and of course, you've got a locker room full of veterans as well. Guys have, been there and gone through the same thing. Mm-hmm. But you're constantly seeing fresh faces in our company. And it just happened to be that I was asked for a little bit of help one day by some students. So I, opened up I got asked to open up the school and, kind of work with them a little bit to help them with some of the things they were struggling with when it came to like body control and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then I got asked to do it again, and then again. And then before I realized it, I was there every week teaching.
And any other areas in the wrestling business that you think you maybe want to explore, maybe production or even build your own promotion one day?
It's crazy to think about sometimes. I sit back and think about all the things that I do in wrestling. I do help with the production side of Chikara. There are things that I do to help behind the scenes with that, and some of which I can't go into necessarily because secrets. Mm-hmm. But I do help with creating and producing content at Chikara, as well as some of that I've released on Patreon, the Closet Champion Patreon. That I can talk about that I do there because of the paywall, and mm-hmm. for the most part. It can be kept secret. But between every student that comes out of the Wrestle Factory is costumed by Closet Champion. A lot of the things that I do behind the scenes, whether it's music for the company or creating video content and stuff, right, is going through Closet Champion. So it's a lot of things that I've already am involved with that people just don't necessarily know on purpose. Even if I'm saying this now, they won't know exactly what my hands have been on because secrets.
Well, it's part of the wrestling business, the keeping kayfabe alive, as they say.
Yes, there are certain things that I'll always be willing to tell my story and talk about, things related to my career. But there are certain things that, in order to avoid breaking complete, illusion, you shouldn't know, just for your insanity while you're watching.
It kind of, if that comment reminds me of like back in the, I think 90s, early 2000s, there was a show on Fox TV where it was, they were giving away the secrets to magicians. Remember that show?
Yeah. They did a series of those. They did one on pro wrestling as well.
And it was like, I saw the clip of like what they were going to be putting out. And I was like, oh man, I'm so down. I want to see how they do it. Set myself up for that evening. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so exciting. And then once I finished watching it, I was like, damn, I wish I didn't know. So sometimes as wrestling fans, we want to know more and more and more. And yet the more we know, then I'm like, damn, I wish I didn't know that anymore. Well,
that's why I've been such a big fan of showing what we do at the Wrestle Factory. So for a long time, I was showing, I put out a series called Ring Shape, and then which showed you the exercises we do to get in ring shape. Some of the things that we do weekly, which I thought was fun because it doesn't completely break the illusion of how we're putting the performance together, but more so what we do to prepare our bodies for it. Which I feel like is something that not only can be incorporated into for other pro wrestlers in their training, but things that you can do at home if you'd like to train like a professional wrestler. And I did that for a long time. The series lives on Chikara's YouTube channel. And then I also I've done live streams of my training sessions of the beginner stuff because, the beginner stuff is more of a focus on body control and body agency and learning how to protect yourself before you're ever allowed to pick up and put down somebody else.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And let's get a little bit creative and go into that creative mind of yours for a moment. If you were to put yourself in a current WWE storyline, what would you write out for Ophidian?
I would love to be part of the 24/7 storyline with R-Truth. It's my favorite thing in the world of professional wrestling right now. And the shenanigans that he's getting, that's my favorite aspect of pro wrestling, the shenanigans.
It's very entertaining. Oh, man, it's so entertaining.
It is, but what people don't necessarily sometimes, and this is not a bad thing, but it's hard to see the amount of work that goes into planning that out and making it fun and exciting each and every week. We can all go in the ring and perform, right? There's no doubt in anybody's ability that's at that level to put on an entertaining match. But what's harder than that is keeping your eyes peeled to the TV or keeping your eyes, on pro wrestling when it's not in the ring, when it's backstage, when you're creating segments and doing stuff like the 24/7 title. That, creating new ways to hide and run and to steal would be probably the thing that I think Ophidian would be best at. Finding new places to slither out of, coming out of the ceiling like Spider-Man. It's kind of like any apparatus I get my hands on.
It's kind of like those Easter eggs that Bray Wyatt's puppeteers were putting out through the backstage segments, like where would Ophidian show up next, and like he's like down in a corner just sliding his way, and every week you get closer and closer and you're like, oh, it's gonna happen, like the anticipation is building. Good idea, bro. Good idea. As far as like the current state of professional wrestling where it is right now, as a fan, what other storylines or other bodies of work that people have put out have really captivated you?
I love storylines that are characters too that are more than just pro wrestling. The very first real memory of pro wrestling I have is of The Undertaker. And I'm not the only one, right? There's a lot of people, but there are specific things about his character that drew me in, and it wasn't necessarily his in-ring work. Not that I enjoy his in-ring work, But that's not what I remember, growing up. All of my memories that I can think of that I can pull back from my childhood are from his stuff outside of the ring. Like when he would put people in body bags.
Very
He
true.
had that crematory, I think that's the right word for it, where he'd lock people up. And I remember a visual of Ultimate Warrior's face at the window going to be, burned alive by the Undertaker. The moment when the fake Undertaker showed up, the gray gloved Undertaker was around the Teddy DiBiase had, and then they're built the SummerSlam, where purple gloved Undertaker went face to face with gray gloved Undertaker. Like, those are the things that I remember the most. Undertaker with his, vulture. All those things, right? Those are the things I remember most about pro wrestling, are those moments. I think at the end of the day, that's what I'm drawn to the most about this art form, is that aspect of it. Yeah, a lot of pro wrestling isn't actually pro wrestling. A lot of what happens in the ring, it's a very small part of it. It's an important part. It absolutely is. It's an extremely important part to what we do. But that's only a small chunk of it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that that captivates me about The Undertaker, and one of the things that I'm most impressed on, is the backstory, like how much depth his character has had over the years, where, a brother was introduced, the family and what happened in his past to make him who he is, and how he evolved to be, Dead Man Rising, The Undertaker and the motorcycle, to back to the original Undertaker. Like, that whole story has years of depth that they've really sunk their teeth in going into detail. It's very impressive. And like you said, it's one of the things that, as wrestling fans, you're right, we do remember more of the stories behind the person than the actual match, unless in the match there's actually a larger story being told.
Those moments behind the scenes, those character beats, those things we enjoy create the excitement for the match. And without it, we don't have the memorable matches that we can think of. Like moments like Hogan and The Rock. Like, if those two characters didn't exist the way they did for years first, we wouldn't have had that WrestleMania 18 moment between Hogan and, The Rock. You wouldn't have had that WrestleMania with Benoit and Guerrero, where they're able to end the show with, hugging each other as champions.
It wouldn't mean as much.
From the, exactly. Absolutely.
So looking back in your 13 years, what are those moments to you? If someone were to look at your body of work and say, like, these are the moments that stick out to me in Ophidian the Cobra's career, what would those be?
There's one specifically that I think most are able to trace back to, and that was the most illegal move in the history of professional wrestling, our viral video. And I'm not saying we were the first viral video for pro wrestling, but we were one of the earliest viral videos for professional wrestling as a whole, especially from the independent level. When that hit for us in 2011, it helped put myself and Amasis on the map in a way that no other match could have, where we, hypnotized our opponents and turned our match into a dance party. And that was a huge moment for my career in order to kind of elevate me to the next level on the independent scene. Still to this day, and so almost 9 years later, it is about 9 years later, still get a lot of requests. I'm sorry, it's 8. I get a lot of requests to continue, and I still do. I still perform the most illegal move in the history of professional wrestling from time to time. Besides that, there's definitely a few other moments for myself, being able to wrestle Mike Quackenbush in a singles match, and the 12 Large Summit, without a doubt, a huge moment for my career. It's one of the greatest matches I've probably ever had, without a doubt. And there's a few mixed in there. Amasis and I, the first time we were able to wrestle the Briscoes down for RCW Maryland, which is unfortunate that they're no longer around, but with them, as well as some, debuts amongst other companies, and being able to work places like TCW and do things like that.
Well, we're big proponents here that wrestling brings us together. It's one of our main, mission statements in our show. You've already mentioned a few of the names that I'm sure you're grateful that wrestling brought into your life. Is there any others? Because you mentioned your wife. I'm sure you're grateful that wrestling brought you guys together. Mike Quackenbush. Is there anybody else that you'd like to kind of give a nod to and thank wrestling for?
Well, there's quite a few. I grew up alongside my longtime tag team partner, Amasis, who is now Deshaun Pratt. He no longer works for Chikara, but it's now outside of it. But I grew up with a group of dudes in my area. We all backyarded together. You know, we all watched wrestling together as kids. We all backyarded together. We all got into professional wrestling together. So me, Lince Dorado, if you're not familiar with him, in 205 Live, and Casey Simo Monday Night Raw, as well as, Amasis and a few other guys like Joe Gacy, who is currently, or was up until recently, tag team champion involved with Eddie Kingston. And guys like that, if I started with that, I definitely probably wouldn't have gotten this far if I didn't surround myself with a group of guys that were just as passionate about being in the industry as I was. And of course, guys like Mike Quackenbush, Cesaro, who helped train me, in Cassius Ono or Chris Hero, guys who all helped train me and took a stubborn young punk and helped him create a wrestling career.
Yeah, it's that theory of iron sharpening iron. A lot of the people who you just mentioned are like some of the people who are at the top of their game and just ready for that next level, just like yourself. Who do you have your eyes set on in the future as opponents or dream matches for yourself?
I'm still hoping to get my singles match with Ultimo Dragon before he retires. And I know we're pretty close to it. You know, like he's not too far off from being in a position where he probably won't be taking many singles matches anymore. But, you know, I mean, he's had an extremely long career. I'm hoping to get, again, a one-on-one match with Ultimo Dragon, Ray Horace, and Laredo Kid. Two guys who are currently out in the world in independent wrestling killing it, that I would love to get, my hands on in a wrestling ring.
So moving on to what's next, you definitely mentioned some great matches that we would like to see, but what is coming up for Chikara and Ophidian?
So there's some big stuff happening over at Chikara right now. I'm currently a part of the JKI tournament. That's the Johnny Kidd Invitational tournament. And currently, in the semifinals of, the culmination of which will be at Chikarasaurus Rex on September 7th. And as far as I'm concerned, it'll be me winning the whole thing. But right now I'm in the semifinals, waiting to see who my semifinal opponent will be, whether it's Boomer Hatfield or Rory Gulak. And also in the tournament is Mike Quackenbush and Green Ant as well. Beyond the Johnny Kidd Invitational tournament, obviously I'm developing a new series on Chikara based around my training style with the Crucible and how we're changing the way that Chikara functions as a whole, not only just in the Wrestle Factory, but as a company. And some of that stuff is already starting to be released. You can see on Chikara's YouTube channel. And I mean, outside of that, got a huge match lined up for GCW on August 30th, which is StarCast weekend with AEW's event happening in Chicago. I'll be out there with GCW and Black Label Pro in a massive, what they're calling a Lucha All-Star matchup, which is myself, Ray Horace, Black Taurus, Gringo Loco, Arez, and it's a six-way matchup. It's going to be huge. Especially to have that collection of six luchadors from different parts of, from different parts of Lucha Libre who all have a different Lucha Libre style, will be great to see together in one place. I'm crazy excited for it.
Man, there's so many great things going to be going on with you and the upcoming matches. Thank you for spending your time here with us. If we want to continue following you, let us know where we could do that.
Of course, you can follow me on all social media at Ophidian Cobra on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Doesn't matter. It's at Ophidian Cobra. Or you can follow myself and become a patron of the arts at patreon.com/closetchampion, where you'll get some behind the scenes stuff, not only just myself, but the stuff that Kate Nix works on, whether it's music or wrestling pieces like costumes and things related to that, to also some behind the scenes stuff that I do for Chikara, some video content that I make for them, and it gets posted there first and foremost. You can join us for as little as $2 a month to get access to that. Even if you don't necessarily aren't there for the content, you can donate a minimum $2 a month to help support an artist that can create more if, enough people do it.
Very true. Very true. And if you see the name Ophidian the Cobra in any of your match flyers, upcoming shows in your area, it is my strongest suggestion to check them out. There is nothing like seeing you live, brother. And I'm going to hold myself to that because, like I said at the beginning, just a wow moment. By the time your match was over, you literally, your mouth will drop and be like, what the did I just see? Fucking amazing, man. Thank you so much for joining us, my man.
No, thank you for having me. This is the master of snake style, Ophidian, and thank you for listening to A Shot of Wrestling. Be sure to stay tuned for a last call. Yes.
He was known as the snake spirit.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the conversation between Ophidian and myself. He is the first one who has joined us here on A Shot of Chikara, which are our series of interviews leading to the big event on September the 7th, Chikarasaurus Rex. In case you missed it, your boys at A Shot of Wrestling will be the social media ambassadors for that event when it comes live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And if you've not done so already, make sure you follow our weekly podcast hosted by Michael J. Putty and Mark Schwann as they go over all the news and all the happenings in the world of professional wrestling. Again, I'd like to thank everybody at Chikara for welcoming us on this journey to Chikarasaurus Rex. I'd like to give a special shout out to Mike Quackenbush, which you'll listen to a future interview. Our Quackenbush interview part 2 coming to our series of interviews here on A Shot of Chikara. For Ophidian the Cobra, I've been your host, Abel. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I need to announce it's last call at the bar.
Oh. All right, we have made it to the end of the episode. It's last call, and we're still here with Ophidian the Cobra. This is how it works, Ophidian. Rapid fire questions. The first thing that comes to your mind is the first thing you should answer. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
Then away we go. Other than wrestling, what is your favorite sport?
My favorite sport, I guess you really wouldn't consider it a sport, like, but traditional stance, but martial art. I did that most of my life, 12 years of it altogether, Goju-Ryu, Taekwondo, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, combat sport.
Yes.
What horror movie character would you like to see wrestle?
Pinhead.
Nice. What common man job is made for a snake?
Plumber.
What is your go-to snack when on the road?
My go-to snack would be tasty cake pie, cherry flavor.
What do you consider to be your prized possession?
I guess I would have to go with my collection of masks.
I dig that, man. People would have spirit animals, but a snake would have a spirit person. What is your spirit person?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I would have to go with Jackie Chan.
Very nice. Good pick.
Yeah.
Who was your mark-out wrestler growing up?
Oh, no, that's an easy one. So I would say it would be between two because they're evenly split, Rob Van Dam and Ultimo Dragon.
Hell fucking yeah. Other than wrestling, what makes you smile?
A good cheesy horror flick. I love camp. I love cheese. And I love it even better when they're combined in the horror element.
And finally, Ophidian, if your career ended tomorrow, what would you like to be remembered for?
I would have to say my contributions to professional wrestling behind the scenes. The in-ring stuff is great, but all the things I do behind the scenes, whether it's costuming or teaching at the Wrestle Factory or making content for Chikara, my contributions to the whole to help move the medium forward, not just in the ring, but behind the scenes in a way that most people don't think about.
Yeah, and it's all those behind-the-scenes contributions along with that in-ring work that makes us love you so much, brother. Thank you so much for joining us on A Shot of Wrestling, and we'll be seeing you very soon.
Yes.
Hey, baby, I hear the bell ringing, hip tosses and body slams. Oh, my. And maybe you seem a bit confused, yeah, baby, but I got you pinned. Ha 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 ha. But I don't know what to do when I see them with that golden case. They're cashing it in. Authority all in my face. What is a man to do? Good night, everybody.